Hey folks, this is Nathan Shepker here from Top Fly Guide Service, here to show you how to do the Waterload Cast. This cast is the easiest cast to get your fly line back upstream from a run that we fished. I see a lot of people working too hard in order to get back upstream. So if you notice right here, I'm at the end of my drift. My line is downstream of me. And much how a fly rod works, if you've seen it in a false cast or if you don't understand a false cast, when our line is forward and we pull back, that rod bends, and that's called loading the rod. When I stop behind me, that line unloads behind me, and then the same thing happens and vice versa. When I go cast forwards, the fly rod bends behind me and shoots the line forward. So right here, I'm at the end of my drift after fishing, and as soon as I start going upriver, if you watch my rod, when I move upriver, see how the rod bends, it loads. It loads the fly rod. So what I'm going to do is use that, the benefit of the water, to load the fly rod. So when I want to go back upriver, I'm going to point directly at my flies. I'm going to point the direction I want the flies to go, and I'm going to make my cast. So a couple things I see people make, the mistakes I see people make, is that they go too early. So if I'm at the end of my drift, or not quite at the end of my drift, excuse me, and I have a little bit of slack on the water still, or still fishing, and they go to recast, there's too much slack on the water to cast. So what I have to do is either before my cast, I have to wait for the line to come tight to the flies or strip in until I'm tight to the flies. Then I can make my cast. And what I want to do when I'm making a water load cast is point directly at my flies and come up and do a little hill. I want to paint the other shoreline with my rod and then come back down. If I do a straight linear motion, those flies follow the rod tip, and a lot of times they collide with the rod tip. So that's a big common mistake I see people do. And another one I see people do is they use just their wrist. So you notice if I just use my wrist, the parameters of the rod are only moving this far. So if I use my shoulder, and this is the same as in the false cast, I can make the rod tip move this far compared to this far. So I'll show you both. I just use my wrist compared to if I use my shoulder. And it's the same thing like I said with the false cast. We generate a lot more, the rod has a lot more time to load, and the flies are going to go out further. So make sure you point directly at your flies. That gives me a motion from here to here. A lot of people start right here. The same thing. I don't have that much time to load the rod. So I'm going to point directly at my flies, come tight, small hill, come up and back down, and use my shoulder. So here is a first-person look and drone footage of our water load cast. So I'm ready to cast here. To my right, my line's done. We're done with our drift, and I'm going to just simply, with my shoulder, point directly at it, and point the direction I want my flies to go, make my cast. You're going to notice too when I make my cast, I'm going to start a small hill. I'm going to come up, paint the other shoreline, come back down to the water. That's going to keep our flies from hitting our fly rod, because the flies will follow the fly rod if I just do a straight linear motion. So we want to come up a little bit and down. And then I'll show you too with the wrist here, show you what happens. So just use my wrist. My rod only moves from there to there. So I want to use my shoulder. My rod tip moves from here to here. Now I can generate a lot more line speed with the tip moving from there to there versus here to here. I'm ready to cast here. To my right, my line's done. We're done with our drift, and I'm going to just simply, with my shoulder, point directly at it, and point the direction I want my flies to go, make my cast. You're going to notice too when I make my cast, I'm going to start a small hill. I'm going to come up, paint the other shoreline, come back down to the water. That's going to keep our flies from hitting our fly rod, because the flies will follow the fly rod if I just do a straight linear motion. So we want to come up a little bit and down. And then I'll show you too with the wrist here, show you what happens. So just use my wrist. My rod only moves from there to there. So I want to use my shoulder. My rod tip moves from here to here. Now I can generate a lot more line speed with the tip moving from there to there versus here to here. Thanks for watching. If you haven't already, subscribe to our YouTube channel at Top Fly Guide Service, and follow us and like us on Facebook and Instagram. Have a good one.